Unathi, a very warm good morning to you. Welcome to AMU's fellow colleague. Now, tell us more about today's event that will be taking place at the Fort Hare University just behind you.
Thank you very much, and let's welcome all our viewers watching us. Indeed, we are broadcasting live from Fort Hare University. It is the eve of the big occasion happening tomorrow, the Fort Hare University celebrating its centenary. As you possibly can see behind me, the university is getting a bit of some tender care, some TLC. I mean, it was battered and bruised during last year's Fees Must Fall campaign, and this was one of the targets of the students during those violent protests. I mean, it was not looking as pretty as it is looking now, and we believe that by tomorrow they are trying to make sure that it is in tip-top condition and ready to welcome all the guests and that will be coming here to celebrate the 100th year anniversary of this institution. However, what I can tell you is that as of today, I mean, a lot of events will be happening in its East London campus, some 120 to 80 kilometers from here. That is where a lot will be happening. I mean, we understand that there's a cocktail event which is expected to be attended by a lot of high-profile people. I mean, some of them are products of the university itself, and some are leading in government, some are leading in academics, and some will be just ordinary people who want to be part of this event. But the main event is happening tomorrow. As to what is happening inside, I mean, I can tell you that inside the sports center, the biggest venue in this institution where the main celebrations will be held, I can tell you that people are busy inside setting up the stage, ensuring that the lighting is in order, everything is in order and ready for tomorrow. And we do expect that later in the afternoon, the iconic Fort Hare University choir will be inside there to rehearse and make sure that the rendering of the African Union anthem as well as the South African national anthem they are able to do that in order. I mean, you won't be surprised by me mentioning the African Union anthem. I mean, this is an institution that is held in very, very high regard, not just here in South Africa, but across the African continent. It is one of the leading institutions ranking high up along universities like Rhodes University, not far from where I'm standing, and of course Makerere University up in Uganda. Those are some of the leading institutions that have produced some of the biggest names. I mean, if you look at some of the alumni of Fort Hare University, you'll probably rank it very, very high. If it's not one of the leading, it is the leading institutions here in Africa. So yeah, this is what is happening at the moment. But the highlight of tomorrow's event, if I can tell you, will be the memorial lecture on the life of Mr. Zakaria Kiodirelang Matthews. He's popularly known as ZK Matthews. He is the product of Fort Hare University. He is the first honors graduate of this institution. He came back to be a lecturer, and we are also told that he was an acting vice chancellor, the first VC of this institution. So he is someone who's held in very, very high regard in this institution, someone whose history and stature in South Africa is very much associated with Fort Hare University. And that lecture will be delivered by another product of this institution, a man who wears the black and the gold-striped black blazer of Fort Hare University with great pride. That is Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. He is the one who will be delivering the lecture on the life and times of Mr. ZK Matthews. But a lot of people will probably be wondering who is ZK Matthews. Like I told you, he's the first honors graduate of this institution. He's one of the greatest South Africans, a man who had a very, very big hand in the drawing up of the Freedom Charter, which is regarded as the leading document and a Bible of what South Africa ought to be like. So we are looking forward to that event, and I can tell you that a lot of people associated with this institution are looking forward to that event. The old people who are now retired, who were trained in this institution, as well as the current crop of students and staff alike, they are looking forward to tomorrow's event.
Now, Unathi, you did mention, very big and influential names such as IFP leader Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who will be delivering a lecture, and also some of the, high-profile names that have graced, Fort Hare University as part of its alumni, including, former President Nelson Mandela, including current President of Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe. Now, as Fort Hare University prepares to celebrate its 100-year centenary, tell us some of, the highlights of its rich history, its rich 100-year history of existence.
Well, speaking to the VC a little earlier on, he said that they take pride at the fact that they have produced quite a number of people who have gone on to make great contributions, not just here in South Africa, but internationally as well. People who like himself, I mean, he's also a product of Fort Hare University, and he now sits as the Vice-Chancellor. And he told me that the acting Vice-Chancellor of Fort Hare University is a product of this institution. The Vice-Chancellor of Rose University, not further south from here, is also a product of this institution. The institution in Mpumalanga, the higher education institution that has just been established there, the Vice-Chancellor is also a product of this institution. I mean, its legacy doesn't only, is not only confined to academics and politics. We do have people who have gone to make big names for themselves in economics also. I mean, the first black chartered accountant is also from this institution. That is Mr. Wiseman Kuhlu. Professor Wiseman Kuhlu, rather, is a product of Fort Hare University. So those are some of the highlights. I mean, if you look at some of the names I've mentioned, I mean, I've mentioned quite a lot of men. But speaking to the VC a little earlier on, and I probed him on this issue, because it may give an impression that Fort Hare University was only for men. But he told me that there are quite a number of high esteemed South Africans who are females, who are products of this institution. And the former health minister, Ms. Mama Manto Chabalala Msimanga, the late, is also from this institution. Matsipe Kasabure, also from this institution. So those are just some of the names. I mean, it is an institution that has stood the test of time. It was formed in colonial South Africa. It saw through the apartheid South Africa and even the Bantustans in the 80s. And it is still standing firm, even right now in the democratic South Africa. And it continues to produce people who are held in high regard, people who are making giant strides and are making a difference in South Africa. And they are telling me that, speaking to some of the learners here, they say that they do not want this institution to be remembered only by those who were at this institution long ago. They want to come out of this institution themselves and make a name for themselves and make a meaningful contribution to South Africa. So this is an institution that has a bright future going forward. I mean, you can foresee it still in existence in the next 100 years and still continuing to produce maybe some future presidents, not just of this country, but of the African continent also, because they are telling me that the number of nationals that are represented in this institution, in terms of students, they have no less than 10 who are coming from the African continent. They do have students from Kenya, students from Zimbabwe. There's a whole host of students who are coming from Zimbabwe. I suppose that is probably because Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe came from this institution. It is an institution that he respects a lot, and ensures that some of the leading students, some of the top students in Zimbabwe do come down here in Fort Hare University to further their studies and go back to Zimbabwe and turn the situation around and make Zimbabwe a better place to live in, and of course contribute to South Africa also, because we do have some very high caliber Zimbabweans who are making a meaningful contribution right here at home in South Africa. So it is one of those institutions that continue to grow even beyond the 100 years. We do expect that Fort Hare University will still be one of the leading institutions. And one of their goals is to ensure that they do spread their footprint across the African continent. If possible, perhaps in the next 20 to 25 years, they would love to open a campus in one of the African states, perhaps in Lesotho for starters. And those are some of the views of some of the people who are working in this institution. So there are still some big dreams. There are still some big things on the pipeline that are set to come from this institution.
Now, Unathi, before I let you go, you did mention that you had a conversation with the VC of Fort Hare. You did mention behind you that the university's entrance, at least, is still visibly getting some tender loving care, obviously, from the last year's Students Must Fall movement and protests that were happening in the country and, of course, in the university. Has the VC, during your conversation, mentioned, or did you perhaps get even a sense that the Students Fees Must Fall campaign last year has sort of redefined the university's rich history, of course, in recent events?
Well, Fort Hare University is known to be one of those institutions where there is a democratic sort of political arena in terms of student politics. I mean, as I'm speaking to you right now, this is one of the few institutions, Black African institutions, that are under the leadership of the DA-aligned DASO. I mean, you won't necessarily associate Fort Hare University with the DA. I mean, it is an institution that has its history that runs very parallel with the African National Congress. I mean, it is turning 100 years today, formed back in 1916 as South African Native College, probably 4 years after the South African Native Congress, which is now known as the ANC, was formed. So their history ran parallel. And for the better part of its history, it was led by SASCO, which is aligned to the ANC, but we are seeing some changes taking place. We saw PASMA, which is associated with PAC, taking over as the governing students' organization in this institution. Like I'm speaking to you now, it is under the leadership of DA. So there is some free political maneuvering taking place here. And in terms of the fees must fall, they say that it has changed the institution a bit more, and it has made it a bit more accessible to those who previously did not have the privilege of being afforded to be students in this institution. And speaking to some of the old alumni in this institution, they said it was very, very difficult for those who were coming from poor families, sadly, to be able to study in these institutions. Those who are coming from such families, they've had to sell cattle and goats to ensure that they do afford education in this institution. And fees must fall has ensured that there will be no increase in fees this academic year. And there were some lenience in terms of registration for those students who are who have good grades, of course, and are coming from difficult backgrounds. They were afforded a chance now to be students of this institution, and it's something that they take great pride in. And they say that to be students in this institution on its 100th year of existence, it's something that inspires them a lot and makes them to want to achieve a bit more and ensure that in the next 100 years, we are not only talking about the likes of Mandela's and the Oliver Tambos and all those people we've mentioned before, but we are mentioning their names also as some of the greats who have come from this institution. So the Fees Must Fall campaign has had a great impact in this institution and made it a bit more accessible than it already was, even for those who are coming from difficult backgrounds. And we do expect that going forward, a lot of South Africans who are coming from poor backgrounds will be able to enter the doors of this institution and make a meaningful contribution in their families, first of all, turn their situation around, break their families from the struggles of poverty, and make sure that they go on to contribute meaningfully even to South Africa also.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Unathi. Thank you for that update. Now, that was our reporter, Unathi Binqose, who is currently at the Fort Hare University in Alice in the Eastern Cape, updating us, of course, about the university's 100-year celebration of its existence. But I'll leave on news with that. Let's head over now to the sports